rather than being wait to be drafted, we'd rather volunteer. And there was 3 of us that were good buddies, and we all chose the Navy. So in February of 1951, that's more than you people ever think about how old that is. Anyway, we enlisted and went to Great Lakes, which is up near Chicago. Spent 8 or 10 weeks, something like that, at what's called boot camp, where you learn the basics of military life. And the main thing you learned there was to take orders and hurry up and wait. You did whatever they told you, and then you waited for the next assignment. At the end of that boot camp, then you're waiting for your next duty assignment. And having grown up on the farm and being a pretty good mechanic, I thought, well, I'll work in the machine shop. But the Navy, in their wisdom, after they gave you tests, thought otherwise, and so I ended up going to electrician school. And my buddy, who was an electrician apprentice at the time, he got assigned to the machine shop. Anyway, so after a few weeks in the electrician's mate school, I was assigned a duty aboard this ship, which is the USS Columbia to the Navy aboard this ship. It's doesn't mean too much to you, but 670 feet long and about 70 feet wide, and it had approximately 1,500 people aboard this ship. That's all the people that live in Rossville would be aboard this ship. And so when you're out at sea, you know, it's just like a city within itself. You got just about every occupation needed. You've got to have cooks, doctors, everything like that. So we're divided up into groups, and my job was an interior communications electrician, which meant that we worked on anything that had to do with communications within the ship itself. Aboard this ship, there were 275 dial telephones. And I happened to be the one that spent most of my time keeping those in operation. But just for a little secret, you know, in the military you have inspections every week. Some officer will come through and check your shoes and make sure your lockers in this right order and everything. So having charge of the telephones, I found it very convenient that these officers' quarters, the more trouble they gave us on inspection, the worse their telephones operated. It didn't take long for them to kind of get the idea, you know, that we better treat these guys a little nicer. But anyway, this was during the Korean conflict, which was over in the Pacific. But this ship happened to be going to what was called the Atlantic Fleet. And so during my 3 years on this ship, I went 2 times to Europe. And during those 2 years, or 2 trips, we visited 15 different cities in 12 countries in Europe. Basically, some of the time was out on the ocean too, but we were in the Mediterranean area, and you'd pull into a city and be there over the weekend. And we happened to be real lucky because this ship normally was what they called the starship, and have the admiral or the leading officer of the fleet. That would be all the ships that were there. And we would be the starship for that fleet when we were in Europe. So we normally had the admiral, so that meant we got treated a little bit better than some of the other sailors on some of the other ships did. They would pull into a port, and then we would cruise down the coast another 20 miles or so and go to a different port, so we didn't have all those sailors for the admiral to deal with. So I had very enjoyable 4 years, 3 years actually on board this ship. As I said, my job was electrician, so we took care of any electrical problems on the ship itself. There were 1,500, did I tell you, 1,500 people on this ship? I think I did already. And I got, just for the older people, that he didn't have hair.
That's what he looked like when he was in the Navy, all those years ago.
20 months out of that 3 years, I was in a place called Vietnam. Had a conflict over there, and my position was transporting supplies to various places over there, towns that you would never hear of, but if you did look it up in the book, you would hear names like Con Tri and Dong Ha, Qua Viet, Khe Sanh, Da Nang, and places like that. So I was in the Marine Corps for 3 years. This is not a Marine Corps uniform. This is a Marine Corps League uniform that I wear. I'm still active in the Marine Corps League. You might have heard once a Marine, always a Marine, and that is true. So we say to ourselves, we keep ourselves fit and trim, so whenever this country needs us, we're ready to go. Okay? So later on, after I get done and after the program, here's some of the uniforms that the Marines wear, the women and the men, different occasions, the winter and summer attire. So put that there. So I'm going to make this short. So I just want you to know that, like you were told earlier, that maybe one day one of you or several of you would like to serve in the military. It's an honorable profession, and I'm a little outnumbered here today. I got 2 sailors over here, and there's always you've heard we like to razz each other, Marines and sailors, and the Marine Corps is actually a department from the Navy, and in 1775 the Continental Congress established Marines, 2 battalions of Marines to serve under the Navy, John Paul Jones. And in 1798, John Adams requested that the Marine Corps be established. And so that's why we have the branches. And we have 5 military branches, and that is the Army, the Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and the Coast Guard. Okay, we have 5 military branches. So I'm glad and honored to be here today to teach you and tell you some things about that. So on that, I'll retire. Thank you very much.
I was in the Navy a long time, and Janelle and I, we got married when I was in the Navy, so I was only in the Navy less than a year.
Less than a year.
And so she's traveled around with me, and we traveled a lot. We moved, what was it, 13 times in 4 years or something like that. And so we traveled all the way around and all that, and we had children, so we had kids your age when I was in the Navy, and I would like to go away, and then Mom would be home, Miss Janelle would be home with her kids all by herself, and she couldn't talk to me, so I was gone, and I actually served on submarines, and there's a neat little book over here about submarines. You might want to look at those pictures, and we go down underneath the water, and we went down there for as many as 2 months. We were actually underneath the water, and there's no telephones when you're underneath the water, so we couldn't talk to each other or anything like that. So if she had to take our little boy Matt to the doctor or anything like that, she couldn't call me up on the phone and say, oh yeah, by the way, I had to take Matt to the doctor today. Or can you stop and pick up a loaf of bread on the way home from work tonight? She couldn't do that. So that was kind of interesting. So, so yeah, I was on a submarine. It was actually the USS Simon Bolivar. We were in Charleston, South Carolina, and I was on there for about 3.5 years. And that was the only really ship that I was served on. After that, and before that, I was in schools and in training to train you to be on submarines. After that, I served on. I basically had an office job in a lot of things, and we would make plans and policy. It was kind of boring in a lot of things. But somebody had to do it. It wasn't, real exciting, but somebody had to do it. And so we kind of made plans and policies. And one time I was actually deployed in 2003. That's only 13 years ago. When I was in the reserves, which is a little different than active duty. And I was over in the Middle East with, if you've ever heard of Iraq and Afghanistan and Iran and Kuwait and all that. I was over there. I was deployed over there, and Miss Janelle was here at home by herself, and we lived in Rossville at that time, and my kids were going to school, and I got a phone call one Thursday and say, you need to show up tomorrow, you're leaving. And I showed up, and on Saturday I was gone. I was gone for 9 months. So, but it was a little better then because we could talk on the phone, and there was email and computers and stuff like that, so we could communicate. So that wasn't as bad as being on the submarine. But when I was deployed in the Middle East, I worked in a command center, and I worked with computers. And we made sure all the people that were, making all the plans and saying, shoot at this bad guy over here, or shoot at that bad guy over there, they were shooting at the right people, they were shooting at the right stuff. So that was my job over there. And I was over there about 9 months, and I came home, and then after that I worked mostly with the submarine force again. And a lot of that was out of Japan. And we would track, and we would study, and we would try to learn the habits of other countries that had submarines, like North Korea and China. And so our job was to gather knowledge and to learn their habits and try to figure out what they can do and what they can't do. Because if we know what they can do and we know how they do it, then if they turn in to be the bad guys, then we know how to fight the battle smarter. So I did that until I retired in 2012. What kind of questions you got?